Welcome to Creative Corner. Hi, I'm Wendy, and I'm with the City of Myrtle Beach here at Pepper Gettings Recreation Center today with part 2 of a beginner watercolor lesson. And this one is mark making. So for this exercise, what you're going to do is basically just practice making different marks and patterns using, I have 3 paint brushes, a wide tip, a rounded tip, and a fine tip. And I've selected 3 colors that I'm going to be using, a blue, a red, and a green, to demonstrate all of the different ways that you can use these brushes to make interesting patterns and designs for your painting. All right, so to get started, I went ahead and chose some student quality watercolor painting paper. This is important because if you're not using watercolor painting paper, it will bleed through your paper. So just student quality is fine. Again, this is a practice exercise. I went ahead and taped it down and sectioned it out into 3 sections. So for each section, I will be demonstrating how to make different marks using the 3 different types of brushes. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to begin by using a flat brush, 5/8 flat brush. I'm going to go ahead and get it wet. And when I'm using watercolor paint, I like to have 2 cups of water, one to clean my brush and one to add to the paint itself. But I went ahead and mixed up the paint colors so they're ready to go. So we're going to use this nice green here for the flat, and I'll demonstrate some different ways to use the brush. So this is a great exercise to do, especially when you're trying to stretch your resources and you don't have very many paint brushes. So I'm going to start by just simply making a broad stroke. Then I can also use my brush in other ways by using the more narrow end of the brush. I'm going to make some zigzags. Okay. Also, another way to think of it is making thin line work. So I can make a nice thin line and go across here. I can do some interesting patterns by going up in addition to that, I can twirl the brush, kind of loop-de-loop, loops at the top. And the method I'm using today is wet on dry, which means the paper is dry, but I'm using the wet watercolor paint. Then I can do it in the other direction. So now my loops, my loops will be below. And then just dabbing it in the paint and go across. This really gives some nice effects to your paintings when you start thinking about all the different ways you could add these details. Smaller dashes across. So anyway, I hope you get the idea here of the different ways to use the flat brush. So we're going to move on. The next brush I'll be using is a fine brush. So this brush is a liner, and it's 3/10 of an inch, and this one is used a lot to make like details on trees, branches, leaves, things of that nature. And I'm going to be using this, let me dab off the excess paint, the blue paint for this one. So I'm just going to start by showing you a simple line across the paper so you can see you can get a very nice thin line. Okay, and then I can make grass, like great blades of grass. So this is very nice to do like landscapes. So when you start thinking ahead, planning your next painting, you can think of which brushes you would like to use. And anytime I get a new brush, this is a great exercise to do before even getting started. Again, I can go back to those zigzags. I could make it more rolling effect, like waves. Zigzags going down, zigzags going up. And also you can learn different techniques by applying more pressure on your brush. It causes the bristles to expand out, therefore making it a much broader stroke. And I also like to use my liner brush for doing a technique called stippling, which is just little tiny dots. And this technique can also give your paintings a lot of detail. When you're trying to add texture, maybe to, if you're painting a tree, to bark. Again, we can do another loop-de-loop. This one would be good if you're, painting letters, anything like that. So there's a few examples of different ways you can use your liner brush. And then last but not least, we have our round brush. This one, or oval brush, is an oval number 4. And again, I always like to get it slightly wet here, dab off the excess paint, and I'll be using a crimson color, crimson red, to demonstrate. The round brushes are really quite versatile as well. So again, you can just make a simple line by going across this way, so for a much broader stroke, or go thinner by turning your brush. That's another way you can use your brush, by turning it in a different direction. So now I get a thin line by just going this way. I create almost like a scalloped effect, which is again a very practical exercise here. This one, I like this method. It almost creates like footsteps. So some common things, when you're picking paint brushes, how long is it going to last? Well, it depends on the quality of the brush. The less expensive brushes tend to leave bristles in your painting, and there's nothing more frustrating than that, than trying to pick out the bristles in your painting. So just keep that in mind when you go for higher and less quality brushes. And that's pretty much it. So I've given you 3 different brushes and examples of how to use your brush. I hope you find this exercise useful and fun. Again, it's a great way to figure out different patterns and shapes that you can make with your brushes, and also to stretch your resources. Thank you and enjoy. Please remember to share your ideas and suggestions with me.